Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 834, Thursday, July the 11th, 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, we got some news items today we definitely want to talk about, but before I do, just want to piggyback off of a story we talked about yesterday. So yesterday we were talking about this Seth Rich case, and I brought up this prosecutor who was, or this U.S. attorney who was assigned to the Seth Rich case. So we're talking about her yesterday. And we've gotten some more information on this, and this is going to blow your mind. It's going to blow your mind. So this U.S. attorney, whose name was Deborah Sines, S-I-N-E-S, who was the U.S. attorney over the Seth Rich case, she was talking about, of course, getting this information, classified information. She's telling this to Michael Isikoff, who's using it in his story, where she's trying to say, well, I got this information, and it showed me that Russia was behind this this conspiracy theory that Hillary Clinton's goons whacked Seth Rich because he stole the emails and gave them to WikiLeaks. Now, that's all BS. It's all been completely debunked, and the woman's either lying or stupid. And she's a U.S. attorney, so we can assume she's not stupid, so she's probably lying. She would never have been put on the Seth Rich case if she wasn't completely a deep state corrupt goon. So, we can just write her off as a deep state liar, part of the cover-up. But what's more important that I just learned after doing yesterday's story was that she just did not communicate with Michael Isikoff, who of course is a mouthpiece for the CIA. She didn't just communicate with Isikoff. No. Deborah Sines, this U.S. attorney, took this information and she provided it to Uncle Bob, the drive-by executioner, the Mueller team. Oh, that's right. She provided information. Deborah Sines, the U.S. attorney who was in charge of the Seth Rich case, provided information to Uncle Bob, the drive-by executioner, regarding her findings, which were that, of course we know they're false, but she provided her findings, which were that Russia created the conspiracy theory that Seth Rich was murdered by Hillary goons because he stole the emails from the DNC and gave them to WikiLeaks. Wow. Why is that interesting to me? Well, it's interesting to me because there's nothing in the Mueller report about Seth Rich, as far as I know. Nothing in the Mueller report, or even a footnote about being given information by the U.S. attorney in charge of that case, telling her that the Russians were behind the conspiracy theory involving Seth Rich. Why do you think that is? Uncle Bob obviously didn't want to put anything in the report for us to find out that he was given this information by this U.S. attorney as it related to Seth Rich. Uncle Bob the executioner didn't want Seth Rich or anything about Seth Rich to show up in his report. I mean, after all, here we have a U.S. attorney providing Uncle Bob the executioner information that would show that the Russians were involved in creating the conspiracy theory about Seth Rich. Now that would play right into exactly his narrative. He certainly should have been very, very motivated to put that in the Mueller report. It would just be another piece of damning evidence against the Russians to help him make his case. But it's not in the report. Nor have we heard anything ever about it from anyone. I sure wish I was on that panel, that committee, that's going to be questioning Uncle Bob, assuming he doesn't chicken out, and I'm not 100% sure he won't. Or maybe being in that closed door session, the two closed door sessions where you'll have Andrew Wiseass, and some of those investigators. Would certainly like to ask them about the information that was given to them by this U.S. Attorney, Deborah Sines, and the information she gave them, which alleged to show the Russians were behind the conspiracy theory involving Seth Rich. I would love to ask him why that's not in the report. I would love to ask him if he followed up on that information. I mean, she's a U.S. attorney and said she did the investigation. She accessed classified information to do it. How was she able to do that? Classified information is compartmentalized. It's only available to you if you have a need to know. How did she have a need to know to get this information? Who authorized that? And why? There's a lot of questions here, don't you think? How is it that Michael Isikoff has this information? Well, I think we know the answer to that question. Because Michael Isikoff works for the CIA. He's a mouthpiece for the CIA. He was also on the payroll, for the most part, he was on the payroll of the Clinton campaign. He's pulling down a lot of cash. Along with his buddy, David Ignatius. They're like a pair. They kind of work together. Those two need to be thoroughly investigated about their activities, what they were doing in their role in the frame-up. There's a lot of media people who were knowingly coordinating with the coup plotters. Media people coordinating with the coup plotters. Just because you're a journalist doesn't mean you have the right to plot, to work with, and be part of a coup. I think there's some liability here. I doubt that Durham's going to go after any media people. They're very, very lucky I'm not the U.S. attorney looking into this, because I would certainly snare every one of these people in my investigation. Someone needs to ask these questions, but I'm sure that will not be asked, because the God's honest truth, my friends, the Republicans on that committee don't want to talk about Seth Rich any more than the Democrats do. Nobody in Washington wants to talk about Seth Rich. You ever wonder why? Deborah Sines, S-I-N-E-S. Look it up. Alrighty, let's get on to the next thing. Yesterday I talked about Trump's transportation secretary, Alex Acosta, and I suggested he should resign. But after watching his press conference today, I have changed my mind. I still don't think it's a very good situation, and just because he was involved in it in some way, it's not good, it doesn't look good, and it will probably dog Trump, especially when, if and when real hard, heavy indictments come out against Epstein, because I'm sure there's more in the pipeline. They're holding him on one charge, but I'm sure that's just a holding. I'm sure they have many, many things in the can. If all they had was that, they wouldn't have arrested him. They'd have waited till they had much more. They've obviously got a lot of things in the can. That's just to hold him. But I do think when a lot of other people's names come out being associated with Epstein, because I'm sure he'll be dropping names unless he wants to spend the rest of his life in jail, and I'm not so sure he does. Although if he drops a bunch of names of some heavy hitters and he's out of jail, I don't know how long he'll live after that. So I don't know. It just doesn't look good for him. But getting back to my point with Alex Acosta, it appears that if what he said in his press conference is true, then it appears that the problem was with the prosecutor down there in West Palm, not with Acosta. It appears that what he did was to try to get something out of nothing, because apparently this prosecutor down here in West Palm had rigged the deal for Epstein, And it may have something to do with the fact that someone told him to back off of it because Epstein was an intelligence guy. Meaning, I assume, CIA. Wouldn't surprise us at all. The CIA meddles with a lot of bad characters. They always have. Going all the way back to the early days of the early 1950s when they were working with the Italian mob, the Corsican mob. Working in the 1960s with Eurasian drug dealers, heroin dealers, drug cartels. They get in bed with a lot of very nasty people because they're very nasty people. So maybe this first prosecutor was told to back away because he was somehow involved in intelligence. Well, that doesn't matter. If an intelligence asset turns out to be a pedophile, guess what? You got to arrest him. Tough luck. The CIA will have to find another source or asset because that one is going to jail. Plain and simple. You should never back off of something like that if this is true. But we also know that the case was set up to fail, the way they handed it over to a grand jury, the way they allowed Epstein to basically get rid of evidence. We had witnesses, of course, who did not want to testify because back in those days, a lot of times when a woman would come forward and accuse someone of rape, the standard technique for the defendant's attorney would be to abuse the woman who's making the claim by making all sorts of accusations about her, how she dressed, how she talked, who she hung out with. They'd go through and investigate these women, and if they ever went to a dance club, if they ever wore a short dress, if they ever wore high heels, if they ever spoke to a man, if they ever wore lipstick. I mean, they'd go to extreme lengths to try to make the woman out to be somehow asking for it, or to be a whore, or something like this, a slut, or whatever. So this is typically what was done to women back in the 1960s, 1970s, when they would try to bring charges against people who had sexually assaulted them, raped them, or what have you. And these were minors. And some of these witnesses, I guess, had been told or warned or what have you that this is the treatment that they would likely receive, and they didn't want to go through that. We also have to remember that Epstein was a billionaire. So he had very, very good, high-powered lawyers, ruthless lawyers, who would do whatever it took to get him off, including bribes or whatever they had to do. And likely there was some of that going on as well. So basically this prosecutor, this Barry Kersher, is probably the guy to blame, and Acosta probably did the best he could to salvage some justice. He says he had no idea that first of all, he said that he was told that Epstein would get at least a minimum of 18 months, not 13. And he was never told that Epstein would be allowed to leave jail for 12 hours a day. He was never told that either. So there was a lot of things done in this case that really Acosta had very little to do with or had very little control over. And it appears he did the best he could into trying to get something out of nothing. And that most of the responsibility in this case likely falls on this prosecutor down in Florida in Palm Beach. So I still think it's not a good situation. I don't think it would be a bad idea if Acosta resigned, but I don't see him as being quite as compromised or is negatively involved in the situation as I did prior to hearing his statement, assuming it's true. So we'll just have to see what Trump does here. But yeah, I just wanted to correct that statement from yesterday because now I have more information I did not have yesterday, and I think I see things a little bit differently now. The UK ambassador who made those comments, those nasty comments about Trump, has been forced to resign. I'm surprised it took as long as it did. I thought he figured that one out in about 15 minutes. As soon as the Trump administration said, yeah, well, we're not going to be dealing with him. Well, seeing as how he's the UK ambassador to Washington, you pretty much have to deal with him. And if the Washington's not going to deal with him, well, guess what? He's got to be fired, because you got to get someone who they will talk to, because they weren't going to talk to him anymore. So it didn't surprise me that Sir Kim, Derek, is gone. And I'm sure they'll find a place for him in the mailroom. Well, let's see. We have the former Obama State Department official, Candace Claiborne. We talked about her several months ago when she was originally indicted. She's now been sentenced to 40 months in prison for passing internal State Department documents to China in exchange for cash and gifts. Her charge was actually conspiracy to defraud the United States government and lying to federal investigators. Off she goes. Let's see. Oh, here we go. More bad news for sleepy, creepy China Joe. As most of you know, almost every video now, I tell Joe to get out. Get out now. He's not taking my advice. He's not listening to me. I don't know why. I'm giving him good advice. There is no upside to staying in this thing. He never should have jumped in the first place. It's only going to bring a lot of things out of the closet that he would rather keep in the closet. And he's incompetent. He's not capable of even being in the game. He should be in the stands, watching, throwing popcorn or peanuts or something. I mean, he's not too far from being able to hide his own Easter eggs. So, anyway, I keep telling crazy, sleepy, creepy China Joe that he needs to get out now. I mean, the Right Reverend Clinton is going to do whatever it takes to get him out. And he can go the easy way or the hard way. She'll do whatever it takes. But he's going to be getting constant harassment and things coming up and biting him in the ass from behind. And he'll never see him coming. So, here we are. Yesterday, the families of illegal immigrants who were separated under Obama are staging a sit-in at Joe Biden's campaign headquarters in protest of the deportations and detentions that occurred while he was vice president. They say they're not going to leave until Biden promises to bring back their family members who were deported if he wins, which he won't. And also they want a public apology. Oh, yes. You know, Biden, if he stays in this race, he will spend whatever time he remains in the race apologizing for his last 50 years of disservice to the country. And that's not even including the scandals that are going to continue to boil. And as those people who are right on his coattails, who are chasing him, if the polls don't move favorably for them, they'll eventually start talking about Ukraine. They'll start talking about his son. They'll start talking about whatever it takes. They haven't gone there yet, but they will. Get out, Joe. Get out now. That's my advice. It's only going to get worse. The Right Reverend Clinton is waiting in the wings for you to drop out. Because when you do, there'll be nobody else that the corporate Democrats perceive as even electable. There'll be no one else but the Right Reverend to come in and save the day and the party and the country. The Draft Hillary campaign is underway. The Draft Hillary 2020 hashtag, the We're With Her in 2020 hashtag, the I'm Still With Her 2020 hashtag. I counted 6 about a week ago when I was looking at them. They're out there. The Draft Hillary campaign, the fake grassroots Draft Hillary campaign, is already underway. Pretty soon you'll start seeing little news stories appearing about how none of the current Democrats give the Democrats any chance of winning, and in fact could possibly destroy the party. What are they going to do? And then you'll start seeing little segments in these stories. Well, you know, the Right Reverend hasn't totally said she's not going to run yet. She's still out there. She could jump in at any time and save the party and the country. We need to draft Hillary. Please, Hillary, run. Keep watching. I know what you're thinking. Well, now that Slick Willie's all caught up in this stuff, she probably won't. You know what? The Right Reverend Clinton, they could have photographs of her and Slick Willie at Peto Island, Orgy Island, doing their thing with underage, kids of either sex. And the Right Reverend Clinton supporters would still support her. She could get convicted of 20 felonies and be sent to prison. And I assure you that there's at least probably 25% of the country, or at least half the Democratic Party, that would still vote for her. Say, screw it, let her run the country from prison. I promise you that that's the case. The Hillary cultists are for real, believe me. I remember the videos. Well, we're hearing more about this feud. It's getting worse and worse between Madame Botox and the wild-eyed commie. So Pelosi, according to AOC, Pelosi has assigned AOC to one committee and 4 subcommittees, and AOC is complaining that Pelosi is giving her busy work to keep her out of the spotlight. She says she doesn't have a relationship with Pelosi. And of course, AOC is also being sued by 2 Twitter users because she blocked them. One of them's a Democrat. And of course, we're hearing about this meeting that supposedly happened, and I'm not sure if it was a one-on-one with Pelosi and AOC or if there was other people. I assume that there were a couple other people in the room as well. But apparently the rumor is that Pelosi had this private meeting or whatever with AOC and dressed her down and grilled her about making comments on Twitter about other Democrats and to having fights about other Democrats on Twitter. And Madame Botox was laying down the law to her that, hey, we don't do that. If you have a problem with another Democrat or you have a problem with me, you come to me and we handle it privately. We don't expose it on Twitter. We don't make our family issues public. We handle them privately. And essentially gave Ocasio-Cortez the instruction to stop it. To stop going out on Twitter and attacking Democrats, and especially her. So, I think that Ocasio-Cortez holds Pelosi in disdain. I don't think she has any respect for her whatsoever and would like to see her gone. And she's probably working with other progressive commies like herself to get rid of as many of Pelosi types as she can. I think that she'll go right back out and do Twitter. I think she'll go back out and do all the things she's been doing. I think she'll continue to criticize Madame Botox and anyone else. I don't think she cares. I don't think she listens. She's like a rebellious, disobedient child. That's exactly what she is, as a matter of fact, a rebellious, disobedient child. And she will only act up even more. She will only act up even more. I said back after the midterms that Pelosi has got a bunch of wild cats on her hands, and she's going to have to try to herd them. And it's nearly impossible to herd wild cats, as she's now finding out. Be careful what you wish for. Well, you got to hand it to Twitch McConnell. He did pull a pretty good one out of his butt, let's say. He did pull a pretty good one out of his butt. Twitch McConnell, asked by a stinking reporter about his family owning slaves. And, of course, McConnell had a really great comeback. Would really shut the reporter up. I mean, after he came back with his response, I mean, it was like dead silence. There was no follow-up questions. There was nothing. The entire reporter, all the reporters just literally were silenced. I mean, it's like he sucked all the oxygen completely out of the room with his response. So they're like, they're asking him about his ancestors or descendants being slave owners. And Twitch McConnell says, well, he said he finds himself in the unique same position as Obama. He says, we both oppose reparations, and we both have descendants that owned slaves. Oh, and the reporter was just like, nothing, no follow-up, nothing. No reporters said anything. It was funny. It was really funny. So, yeah, very good, Twitch McConnell. And I'd never heard that before. I knew Obama was opposed to reparations. I've heard him talk about that before, but I didn't know that he's descendant of people who owned slaves as well. Now, we know, because we heard from Kamala Harris's father, of course, Kamala Harris being the person who got her start in politics between the sheets with the San Francisco mayor doing the horizontal bob when she was 29 and he was like 59 or something. And so we know how she got her start, and I don't know, maybe she did some slavery. I don't know. We probably won't go down that road, but who knows what was going on. But Willie Brown tells us that Kamala is only good at one thing. Maybe he'll tell us what that is. So anyway, Kamala Harris's father, of course, says that their family owned slaves in Jamaica. Well, I didn't get a chance to mention it yesterday, but Ross Perot, of course, died. I really liked Ross Perot. I remember that campaign very, very well. He probably ended up getting Clinton elected, but quite honestly, I disliked George Herbert Walker Bush so bad. And it's hard to say this. It's hard to say that I didn't think that Clinton would be any worse, but I mean, in a lot of ways, I mean, they're kind of the same in a lot of the ways. I think Clinton's probably pervier than HW, although he had a mistress for his entire life and was pretty much of a perv himself. I just, I was kind of hoping Perot would win. But the thing here is that Perot was really the guy, who I really liked Perot back then because he was pointing out the fact that just as we were about to embark on this plan for globalism and the free trade and all this kind of stuff, NAFTA, CAFTA, GATT, and all these things, that's when all that was being talked about before Clinton signed it into law. And he campaigned, almost his whole campaign was based on how we would lose all these jobs, and we'd lose America's manufacturing. And he was absolutely right. I knew he was right. Pat Buchanan knew he was right. I was actually supporting Pat Buchanan in that particular year, if I remember correctly. Anyway, we're learning that Perot donated to Donald Trump's re-election campaign just before he died. And that wouldn't surprise me because, of course, again, his major issue was trade. And, of course, that's a major issue for Trump as well. So, yes, that wouldn't surprise me. But, yeah, I liked Ross Perot. I thought he was a good man, honest man, decent man, straight shooter and all that kind of thing. I wish he'd would have not dropped out there at the end. I wish he'd really, stayed through to the end, because at one point in that race it was a three-way tie. They were all sitting like 31, 32, 33. It was like a three-way tie. And then he kind of pulled out at the end. So I understand he was threatened, or his daughter was threatened, or he started getting death threats and things, and realized exactly how dirty and nasty the swamp is and bailed. So who knows what the true story is there, but yeah, Ross Perot is a good man. And he was right, by the way. So a lot of people are having, these conversations about this story that was written by this left-wing operative about the fact that Horowitz interviewed Steele, or his investigators interviewed Steele, and they found him to be credible and blah, 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 blah. I'm not paying any attention to that. I'm just disregarding it. It just doesn't make any sense. That's why. It doesn't make any sense. Steele, we already know his work, if it's his work, and I don't believe it is. I've made that clear many times before. I don't believe the Steele dossier was the Steele dossier. But let's just assume for the purpose of this discussion that he was. It's been debunked. It was total bullshit. It has no credibility, and therefore he has no credibility, because he was the guy out selling it, pushing it. So if the question is, what did Steele tell Horowitz's investigators? Well, I'll tell you what he told them. The exact same thing he said in his depositions. That he never spoke personally to any of the sources. He got the information from collectors who got it from intermediaries who got it from the sources, and he never spoke to any of them. He said that it was raw and unverified. The information was raw and unverified. He can't back up a bit of it. Now, since that deposition, we've learned that he was meeting with this woman at the State Department, Kavalik, and he gave her certain information, and that she provided that to the FBI 3.5 weeks before they went and got the FISA warrant. That's what's important. That would have been the important line of questioning. That's really all they need to know. Everything else, all you have to do is pick up and read his depositions from the two civil lawsuits, the one with BuzzFeed and the one with Mr. Gubarev. He's already given 2 depositions and answered most of the basic questions. And he can't really come out and say anything different. You know, he was under oath. So, and you can bet that these other attorneys are looking at that, and everyone's, I'm sure that members of Congress, I'm sure that Durham or Barr or anyone else, Horowitz, that they can certainly have access to this information. A lot of it's been released by the judge down in the Florida BuzzFeed case, released a lot of it. And if these investigators wanted to get the full transcripts, I'm sure they could. Mr. Gubarev's lawyer said they'd be more than happy to share everything with members of Congress, whoever wanted to see it. So Christopher Steele could not have, changed his story. He has to stick to his original story. So, I don't buy into this. It's somehow all of a sudden he became credible. This is just not believable, unless he flipped and he's suddenly singing a different tune, in which case he would be perjuring himself from the 2 previous civil suits depositions. And so I don't believe he would do that. He's not quite that stupid. And also, we learned that Steele was asked at some point if the information that he was getting from these so-called Russian sources could have been Russian disinformation. And according to both Steele and his partner, Mr. Burroughs, they said that, oh yeah, we considered that we might be getting Russian disinformation, and we seriously vetted all the information and the sources just to make sure that that was not happening. We were definitely on the lookout for that. That's what they say. He said to make sure that they were not being played. They definitely looked into and vetted whether or not they may be getting disinformation from the Russians. Of course, I don't believe there were any Russians. Nunes is now saying basically the same thing. He's saying what I've been saying for a very long time, which is now he's starting to doubt that there were even any Russian sources at all. I've been saying that for a very, very long time. I think he's making it up. I don't think he wrote anything in that dossier. I think he was just a salesman. So, also, I don't think I have time to get to this. No, I don't think I have time to get to this. I'll get to this tomorrow because it's going to take some time, about 10 minutes probably, to go through this, and it's about when the FBI, and why we know the FBI is lying about when they first started getting the Steele information, and about the name of the Operation Crossfire Hurricane, what that means, what it likely means, and why it's unusual that they would call it Operation Crossfire Hurricane if it had nothing to do with Christopher Steele or the dossier, but rather was about the meeting with Papadopoulos and Downer. It just doesn't add up, and I'll go through this tomorrow. It's going to take time. I don't have time, but I do have just a little bit of time to tell you that we found another lie by Slick Willie. He says that he did not meet Epstein until 2002, but as it turns out, we now learn that Clinton attended a dinner with Epstein in March of 1995. March of 1995 in Palm Beach at the home of Ron Perlman. Also at that dinner was Jimmy Buffett, the actor Don Johnson, and DNC co-chair Don Fowler. So Slick Willie caught in another lie. His relationship with Epstein goes back much farther than he wants to admit. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See ya. Bye.